okay?
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Or we can help you.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Don't
All right,
worry.
I'll get his right arm. Jack is.
I don't want to feel it.
But you are. Get used to feeling that way because you're gonna.
What's this?
Hey.
And Hashem did this for you as a way of cultivating your, I don't know, Midas Anvasanos. They found a lot to connect the content of the scrolls with the lifestyle, including, we'll see, massive communal kinds of living spaces. And a bunch of things that they can only speculate what they were. The more interesting things are written down over here. You have to go up just to get back down.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Good workout.
And not even like,
Give me a take.
not even like 4 days ago, I was able to walk with a normal human being.
Right.
This is so stupid.
I'm gonna jump. We'll catch you. This is the most interesting. This is one of the more interesting rooms.
Grab both banisters.
Is a feeling. Can you hear, Hoodie?
Yeah.
So they feel this is where a lot of the scrolls may have been written. Maybe. Remember, archaeology is the science where the past is said and the future is always changing.
The past is ahead and the future is always changing.
Yeah. Past is set.
Past is set.
Yeah. And the future is set. The past is always changing. Maybe that's. I think I inverted it. Anyway. They make things up and they say it with a lot of authority, but it's reasonable if they found all these things is where they did the writing. There is a feeling in the scrolls and just the whole phenomenon. It's quite unusual. We don't have this in the ancient world anywhere in the world, that people were writing so furiously, fast, and massive amounts. I mean, consider they discovered almost 1,000 scrolls. That does not mean that was the total output. It's entirely possible that these people wrote many thousands of scrolls, and we only discovered a certain amount of them. So what were they writing for? There's a feeling like they're writing as if their lives or future or legacy may have depended on it. Maybe they also knew that their time was short with the Roman persecutions, with the lack of procreation, of not transmitting to future generations. Maybe indeed this was a dying out sect. They felt, of course, that they were doing the Ratzon of Hashem, and the best way to try to preserve that, at least for the future, should there be a future for Klal Yisrael, was to write it all down. That's what the thinking is, and but this is where they ostensibly lived, and occupied them studying the books of the Bible. Hundreds pottery lamps were studied in this room. There's a study place. Now they studied only the Bible. What else were they studying?
How were these
In the late Second Temple period, what were they studying?
Tanakh. I mean, Talmud.
Yeah.
Well, now Talmud didn't formally exist, did it?
No.
Per se, but there was certainly an oral. There was Torah Sheba'al Peh. They had an oral Torah, and they knew it. They walked around with it. They lived and breathed it. These were smart people.
That's why they need light.
So they had some texts, and then they had other things that they had. Remember, in the Second Temple period, they had started writing simple mnemonic codes that would be, with the foundation eventually would become the Mishnah. So perhaps they had that, and maybe they had other texts, like you're saying, the Tanakh texts and other possible texts. More rooms. Yeah, they clearly led lives of simplicity.
Huh?
You manage it?
Yes, barely, but yeah.
These obviously supported columns, right? Also part of the architectural style of the Second Temple period. Roman aqueduct that was built to channel the water here. So there was water, like I explained in Masada, also got here from the mountains because you don't have so much rainfall in the course of the year. And you have massive water cisterns to sustain their water needs, and then this aqueduct would lead down here to feed into this mikveh. And this is a bigger size mikveh. But the large size of the mikveh plus the many different mikvahs that were discovered indicates obviously that just like the scrolls indicate, this is a major feature of their lives. There are different structures. It could be that one was a mikveh, one was a cistern.
What's a cistern?
Cistern is no, it's not a well. It's a well is a natural hole of water. A cistern is a bore, which is man-made. It also preserves water. So you channel the water from aqueducts, or from the alternately from. Maybe you'll stay up here and I'll talk loud, and I'll go down here and point to things. They believe this is where they ate. Right? They ate in a common room. Right, none of this walking into the cafeteria and sniffing and saying, "You call this food?" Right, pottery storeroom, and that was really one of the things the archaeologists wrote about. They were wowed by the systematic orderliness of the people. Everything had its place. They said, "Yeah, okay, they don't write much here, but they had jugs and plates and cups and everything very laid out, and I'm sure everybody knew exactly which was his." This is also, if you've been in Masada, you went and you saw structures like this. This is how they had water cisterns with steps going in. That's where you fetch the water. Long before the rest of the world had a very strong, subsistence to live, the cleanliness aspect of the Jewish life also meant your health. The rest of the world was filthy and stank and often died of disease. They misunderstand why we go to the mikveh and why we wash our hands so much, because they say it's ritual purity or it's for health reasons. It's not for health reasons. It's obviously, we said before, it's part of the mitzvah, but to be a bir chadasha. But a nice fringe benefit is the fact that we are healthy. They believe that our surviving against the odds during the Black Plague in the 14th century was due to our general hygiene, higher hygiene standards. Yeah.
Why would they use the bathroom?
Well, they didn't have bathrooms. They didn't have indoor. Well, that's not entirely true. In this period, the Romans developed a latrine, and they had indoor plumbing. So they had some kind of aqueduct that would come in. If I would take you to the place that we were supposed to go in that Tiul, right at the week of the war that was canceled, we would have gone to one of the sites at the Sanhedrin called Sipori in the middle of the Galilee, and there's an indoor bathroom. Some speculate that it might have been Rebbe's home. And the Rebbe was so wealthy that he could have potentially afforded an indoor bathroom, which would be a luxury. And the Romans had such things, but generally you had, the answer is they had outhouses, like most people in the world until the modern day. You don't realize how different our lives are from pre-modern people.
Worth coming though, right?
Definitely, yeah.
so you can see across through one of the caves.
They blocked it off.
They blocked it off because they didn't want people coming in, but that's not gonna stop an adventurous kid. It was one of these stories. Can you see the cave, Woody?
I was able to see it.
Yeah. So this is one of the stories in which the sheep fell in, right? And that he was of his flock, and he went in afterwards and found all this what he thought maybe was leather, and eventually it became. Look, it was really a process, and this was you have to realize this is sort of no man's land.
I mean, why is there a chassid down there?
That's right. There are hikes here. Just when you least expect to find them, right?
Why is a chassid hiking here?
Yeah.
Himself.
So, you have a situation where you have Bedouins out here. They find what this is during early. This is a very tumultuous time in Eretz Israel. The Jews and the Arabs are vying for a state, fighting the British. The British mandate is wearing out its welcome, and the whole British Empire around the world is very quickly imploding. Even if they were victorious against the Nazis, their empire was in terrible disarray. They would within the next few years they would withdraw most of their holdings in India and much of the world, and they realized that they'd gotten in way over their heads in Palestine and were out. That's why the whole history. Do you know the basic history of the modern state? The British said, we're pulling out. We'll leave it to the United Nations. Oh, terrific. Those United Nations, they'll help the Jews. We'll leave it to the United Nations to sort out who would get what in Eretz Israel. Quite extraordinarily, with lots of manipulation of the Jews, the United Nations on Haftet November, as they call it, 29th of November in 1947, voted for partitioning Palestine. And from that point, then the Arabs said, under no circumstances, from Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They said that then, they're saying that today, and they fought the Jews, and Shem had other ideas, and somehow, even despite our secularism, the Jews were victorious. Anyway, that's the quick backdrop of what's going on in the country, and this was sort of a backwater. There weren't many people here one way or the other, Jews or Arabs or Bedouin. There were a few Bedouin, and I mentioned there was a Jewish settlement just north of the, right near Jericho. They were forced to evacuate, and they left before the state, and all of this fell into Jordan, and this tremendous excitement over the scrolls is sort of like in the sidelines. Nobody's paying attention because you're busy fighting a war. I'm going to get out of the sun. So I mentioned Eliezer Sukenik, who was one of the major archaeologists who was in from the very beginning of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mentioned that there was tremendous confusion, and people were making off with these scrolls in a lot of different directions. I also mentioned that we don't know today where all the scrolls are. Some of them simply people have absconded with them and are hiding with them. Although a large number we do know about, and you'll hear occasionally of those scrolls that are about. They sometimes do world tours, and there'll be a visiting exhibition. You've heard of such things in your local museum? The Dead Sea Scrolls are coming on display. Now, there are Dead Sea Scrolls. I mentioned the Rockefeller Museum. Rockefeller Museum was started in the early 20th century. It's in East Jerusalem. Of course, in the immediate aftermath of the state, that was deep in the country of, not deep, but in
Jordan.
the country of Jordan. 6-Day War. The Israelis, against most expectations, were victorious and conquered, among other land areas, East Jerusalem, including the Rockefeller Museum. Don't know if you know this. Till today, in the international courts, the Jordanians are suing the Israelis. They want their Dead Sea Scrolls back. And the Israelis said, no thanks. We won this fair and square in a defensive war. So they inherited those, and most of those are now in the Israel Museum. Because the Israel Museum stole all the best artifacts. But today you'll hear about this. The Christians have not published them all. Now, is it possible that some of the mysterious missing scrolls do indeed mention Jesus and give some kind of verification of the Christian world? Almost zero possibility of that, because why would they? If anything, they would be the first to publish such finds. If anything, there's probably just a lot of other information about this group, probably the Essenes, but we don't know if they're the Essenes, who lived here. From the 1950s already, the scrolls became a sensation around the world. There was, in Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Manhattan, there was an auction for some of the scrolls. They sold at the time for some tiny scroll sold for something $25,000, which if you adjust to inflation is a lot more today. And today they'd be worth in the millions. They're priceless, and of course they're in the realm of whichever Antiquities Authority is claiming them. In the scrolls, I mentioned that they have fragments of the Torah. They have a lot of Sefer Daniel. What does Sefer Daniel deal with? Which themes? This is Dr. Lyman's class.
Apocalypse?
Apocalypse. Right, in other words, eschatological type writings about the end of days. And in a group like this, why would they be interested in such topics? Why would such themes come into their minds? They were all eschatological. Yeah, they're thinking the end is near. The Chorban either is imminent or it already was. And so what's going to be with Klal Yisrael was on everybody's minds. What is our future? Will we have a future? Of course, Mashiach looms large in all of these discussions. Daniel is one of the places you go. Eov was another sefer. What is Eov? What are the themes of Eov?
War, right?
No. Come on, Hudi, come to life. What are the themes of Eov? No, you didn't.
Yemos Mashiach?
Eov, you've learned it.
Yemos Mashiach?
Nah. Suffering, reward and punishment. What's called theodicy, Tzadik Varalo, Rasha V'Tovlo. These are major themes. That was certainly on people's minds. These are people who are confronting mortality, who are leading this idealistic existence because they felt that they were on the precipice. Really, the way we should feel. We should feel that we're in such period because something big is happening, and yet people are kind of laid back and chilled about everything, which you certainly shouldn't be. Anyway, you come here, you hear about the scrolls. We don't see any of the actual scrolls here. They've all been taken, but you have this sense of destiny, of Klal Yisrael, of different groups of Klal Yisrael, of being fragmented, which was the case in the Second Temple period. Shortly thereafter, do you remember this point of history? Leo, you weren't there, but maybe the three of you heard this. Remember this in history? We said this about aftermath of the destruction of the Second Temple. What happened to all the various sects?
All spread out.
They spread out. The Christians formally divorced themselves from the Jews.
The Christians absorbed
The early Christians were all Jews, and then when they saw that they had no chance of really recruiting the Jews, they separated formally. In theory, did away with any notion of mitzvah observance, even though we have evidence of early Christians keeping certain mitzvahs for hundreds of years. But they moved aside. The the Second Temple sects of the Tzdukim and the Essenes and the Baitusim and the many others simply went to the wayside because when there was no more power to struggle for, because the Jews were now powerless, there was no interest. So they either joined the mainstream regular Jews, which Josephus called the Pharisees.
Were they also absorbed into the Christians?
They were also absorbed into the Christians. They all just left. They went and we don't know about them anymore. And for the Talmudic period, for the next 400 years, as downtrodden and persecuted as we'd be, we didn't have any sects. Even the wayward Jews, the shul they didn't go to was the Orthodox one. Meaning they knew that the emes was the Torah. The place they should have been davening was with Chazal. And learning with Chazal and living life with Chazal, and they just didn't. But there was no notion of an alternate Judaism until
the Karaites.
And after the Karaites, when the Karaites had their own kind of when they eventually went into decline in the Middle Ages, what? Haskalah, and then the many sects that we have today. The Reform Jews like to come here. When I was still Reform, when I was working with the Reform groups, they would play up the sects. And what was their twist on it? Their perspective was, see, there were lots of different colors and stripes of Judaism once upon a time. We too are multicultural Judaism, celebrating differences as they do in the liberal world. And each one has their legitimate place, except for the Orthodox who are intolerant, and you're not allowed to be intolerant, so kill them. Good. Want to do some Q&A?
When you go to when you go away for Shabbos.
Oh, we're totally off these topics. That's fine.
Oh, sure.
We can do anything. I threw out a bunch of information at you. I didn't spell out everything that I possibly could. Let me share my notes.
It's all sort of familiar.
Okay, good. Yeah. We're definitely going to overlap and see talk about things that we. I have a ton of stuff here. See if I didn't cover one of them any major issue. You could ask in the meantime.
If you go away for Shabbos and there's only shul you can go to the Sephardi shul, are you supposed to daven like Sephardi Musaf?
Absolutely. The Sephardi poskim say that a Sephardi and an Ashkenazi shul should do everything Sephardi. The Ashkenazi poskim distinguish. They say that you should do the public things like the Sephardim and the private things like your regular Nusach. So it's not to make machlokas.
So you,
That's
should,
that
you,
basic idea.
so you should say Amen to Brichu.
What?
You should say Amen to Brichu.
If you're saying it out loud, when in Rome, like when in the Sephardi shul, do like the Sephardi. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I said 14 caves. There are 12 caves. That's a mistake. Yeah. Oh, they're all over the place. Oh, and I wronged 25,000. I said 954. It's $250,000. Ooh, I have to get my knowledge better. It's a lot of money. Yeah. Oh, they spend crazy amounts of money on Narasket in the Western culture. So why not on a few scrolls? Yeah. Here's some data. This is stuff I can't quote from the top of my head. Interesting data. The scrolls include fragments from every sefer in the Tanakh except for Megillas Esther. Okay, that's verifying it. That's about 40% of the total scrolls that were found. I said the entire scroll from Yeshaya. They have many what are called, I didn't say this, Sfarim Chitzoniyim, external books like Ben Sirach, which kind of is like Mishlei, but it was the grandson of Yirmiyahu. It's wisdom literature.
Also Enosh. So Enosh mentioned.
That's a different book. That's a different book. But I'm talking about Ben Sirach for a second. Ben Sirach is quoted by Chazal. So even though it was not written Baruch HaKodesh, it doesn't have the same authority as Tanakh, but they had it here. And they have Chanoch, which is Enoch, as it's translated weirdly into English. They have a book called Yovel and Tuvia. They have chapters that read like chapters in Tehillim, but they're not. They have a bunch of the sectarian manuscripts, like we get the Strach Yachad, that the community rules. They have a war document. They have a perush on the Navi Chavakuk. This is great. They have a perush on the Navi Chavakuk. There are not. This is before there are many mefarshim on the Tanakh. You realize it's long before 1,000 years before Rashi. They have mezuzahs. They have other things. The fragments were written. Here are the languages. Almost 80% were in Hebrew. 17% were in Aramaic. 3%, which I think is very small, in Greek. And then one of the languages not well known, Nabatean. The Nabatean were a tiny culture of spice merchants. It was the Nabatean spice trade during this period. They're written on parchment, but not all. You asked if they all feel this. There's a little variety. Tiny, brittle, some on papyrus, some on bronze. They could be very old. Some of them may have been brought here from an earlier, they speculate as early as 400. This is interesting data. The greatest number of fragments come from Tehillim, 39. Okay, everybody says say Tehillim. And then more predictably, Devarim. Chanoch is very big. It's in the Christian Bible. We don't hold by it. It's apocryphal for us, and many others. All of the others really, but in different numbers. There's something else. Yeah, they didn't marry. I said that or Bnei Choshech. Oh yeah. So how do they know the time period? So that they carbon date the scrolls. I never do this with formal groups. I don't take out my notes. It's unprofessional, but I can't help it here. And it's been a while since I guided here. It's the war. I'm cold. So the carbon dating the scrolls indicate that it's like 33 of the Common Era, but they have a 200-year margin of error. So that's.
I thought it was done by 70 once it was destroyed.
What's that?
Once the second temple was destroyed.
They believe that this survived. Maybe have endured it. Maybe Josephus just didn't write about it. Right? They do. There's something called paleography. Familiar with that field? Paleography. They study handwriting, and they say it's exactly the same time frame in terms of size and style of text. The clay jars I didn't emphasize also insulate the contents from humidity.
It seems pretty concrete.
This is it.
How come people don't use this as evidence?
Of what? Of this is that the Torah is true?
Yeah.
The text is sharpshooter.
We don't need
arrow and bullseye.
Yeah.
That's why. That's the answer.
But I feel like if this was mentioned more, I feel like a lot of people would.
It's
like,
very
this
much.
makes a
I
lot of
think
sense.
that's the reason
Like,
why
you like
the Christians come, because even though in screamingly obvious ways it does not sustain their narrative, but because they're grabbing at straws and they so desperately want to have their narrative sustained, historically all they really have to go on is their New Testament, which they themselves wrote, so was very likely made up. So when they find something like this that seems to in some mild way sort of back up early ideas associated with Christianity, they get a lot of geschmack at it for the same reason you're saying we should. But we don't. Because we don't really look to archaeology or any science to back up our faith. These things can be refuted, and people do. And for us, it's simply a curiosity that's simply confirming what we believe anyway, and we don't need this. I think that's why From Groups so come, although I've taken From Groups here, and almost everybody has your reaction of, oh wow, Gishmak.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Could people rebuttal? Like how you're saying that this could be twisted for.
They'll say, for example, that this was typical in the times, and you have other kinds of extremist behavior. And there were the Sikarim, who Chazal described, who were the people who went around with daggers, randomly stabbing people. It was a time of extremism. Here is you come out. Think psychologically as well. You're away from mainstream civilization. You're in the desert. It's conducive to a certain different lifestyle, a purist kind of a lifestyle. Right? You didn't just accidentally make it here. There wasn't a Route 90 you could easily travel on. So even getting out here was fraught. So the fact that you came here, you came with a purpose, a cause, you were doing Ratzon Hashem in your mind. But people could write that off and say, oh yeah, that's just, those are some of the crazies, the fanatics from the time who needed to do their own thing. And you want to say, how did they have some of these books? Yeah, they were bestsellers back in the day. They were bombs, B-A-L-M. They were comforting, soothing to the people who were suffering in crisis, but not an indication that the Torah is true. And they'll play up the fact that there are discrepancies, like I said earlier, between these texts and the actual text, the Masoretic text that we have today. Good. Enough of this. Let's get out of here. All right. Well, we'll just drive. We won't get out of the car. I'll take you here and I'll tell you the story.
This is sort of the middle of nowhere.
Is this where the derech is written in stone? Or?
No. But Nabi Musa, Maskin Makam. Yeah, this by most poskim, Islam is like the Rambam says is not an Isur, is not a Avodah Zarah, and so you could potentially step into a mosque and it's not Asur. People are buried here. We want to be driving here.
Looks ancient.
There's a view across the way. Here, I'm going to stop here. You sit in the car, and I'm going to bring out my notes at 20.
1920, Balfour Declaration.
It's 3 years afterwards, Balfour Declaration.
World War I.
Right? Who affirmed the Balfour Declaration?
Balfour.
Well, Balfour and who else?
Balfour.
I was going to
Lloyd George.
Over there.
Can we just get out of the car?
We can. I don't want to strain Hootie as much as possible. And
yeah, we can't run if they chase after us with a gun or a knife or something.
Right, also true. And they don't like us very much, so maybe I won't get out of the car. But you can kind of see over into the Jordan there. And yeah. Let's go. Oh, my door's open. Yeah, one second. So maybe we'll go to the derech side and see if it's there, and I'll tell you the story. So,
So what was the backdrop?
So what's going on? So it's British Mandate Palestine. Oh, you didn't say which person affirmed the? We said earlier this morning.
I don't know. Was it
from the Balfour Declaration as means that we don't need the 3 oaths are no longer binding.
Yor Sameach.
Yor Sameach, Rav Meir Simcha Dvinsk, right? So in 1920, the British they were strange for conquering power because they didn't actually move in. Certainly not the population, just their army was here and they're policing, and they just appointed a high commissioner, a guy who identified as a modern Orthodox rabbi who really wasn't and did some terrible things. Not a rabbi, a modern Orthodox Jew, Herbert Samuel. But what was really going on in the backdrop was the Zionist movement had been building and gaining steam. And they didn't like it. The Arabs, one bit. They didn't like it from the beginning, from the 1880s, and they certainly didn't like it in the 1920s. And among other things, now after World War I and after the Bolshevik Revolution, there were more Jews clamoring to get in, and that was going to offset the population balance, and the whole thing boded badly as far as they saw. And so, in a planned protest speech, everybody came out to Nabi Musa, and one of the imams got up and preached, and from there, he preached violence. And it was the first organized violent riot of what today we think of as the Arab-Israeli conflict. Started here in Nabi Musa. It continued, I'll show you pictures in a moment, it continued with a march on Yerushalayim in which Jewish communities were ransacked, shuls were destroyed, Sifrei Torah were opened and vandalized, mutilated, Jews were hurt. I don't think out of the 1920 violence, maybe a couple of casualties, but I don't think anything major, but just a sign of things to come, where they saw that actually violence was a really good strategy. It got them pretty far. They did well with it. And
What a scenic.
yeah, isn't this beautiful? Yeah, this is the hike. This is Nachal Og. This is about if we were to start at the bottom and then hike up here, the bus picks us up here, and maybe it's like a half-day thing. And
What's it called?
I've characterized Nachal Og or Wadi Og. I've characterized it as a moderate hike, and I got such flack from some of the guys. Rabbi, that was so hard. You call that moderate?
Their guys are just in bad shape, I think.
I think so. That happens a lot. We did once. There's the insane Nachal Og that continues here and goes all the way up to where we saw the below sea level sign.
It's crazy.
And then it comes out, and that's a really hard hike, and it involves some very scary things. And I remember when I advertised we were going with Derek. This is years ago. We haven't done a hard hike in a long time. I remember advertising, don't if you're a wimp, don't come. Only for bring real men. Only real men. Bring your machete. It really, And the guys, of course, saw the sign and they said, "All right, yeah, all right." And then when we got to these really scary parts of the hike, their voice level totally changed. I mean, this is so hard. I can't do it.
What stuff was
If
there?
the bus had to pick you up at the top, you
You have to navigate certain ridges and steep inclines and sharp drop-offs that are scary and things like that. It was fun. Boom, 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 boom. This is all bloody. It's all blood and guts, this one. Vayacha Yehoshua es melech Dor, ves melech Makeda, ves melech Chatzor, ves melech Adulam, ves melech Hebron, ves melech Achshaf, ves melech... it's not Shomron. We looked it up. This is an old-time secular Israeli song, but really what it should be, not Shomron, because that's an anachronism. It wasn't in the days of Yoshua. It's Lasharon, Bez Melech Lasharon. That's a legitimate one.
Mm-hmm.
It's still right. Yum bum 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 bum. Bez Melech Horma, Bez Melech Arad. כל המלכים 31 חזק ואמץ ואל תכעס כי לך הארץ הזו סאחס חזק ואמץ